Morning, welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley Brewer. This is Talk. Let's get straight to my next guest and let's talk about why so many people seem to be very upset with the Supreme Court for their rather clear ruling about what the law not only is but has always been when it comes to women's biologically sex-based rights. It seems that not just Labour MPs but doctors are unhappy with that decision. Let's talk to Emma Hartley, no relation, who's a campaigner at the Women's Rights Network. Good morning to you, Emma.
Hi, hello.
Thanks for joining us. Let's start with the Labour MPs, because we've got 4 Labour MPs, usual suspects, Nadia Whittome and others, who've signed a motion basically arguing that the Supreme Court decision is basically, transphobic and is an issue, and are rather angry, it would seem, at the Prime Minister for apparently accepting the Supreme Court ruling. What are they saying?
So I think it's quite extraordinary, really, what they're saying, because they seem to be saying that the clarity that the Supreme Court judgment has given us is somehow hateful, divisive, transphobic, when actually, as public policy makers, which they are, they should see that this is actually a really important thing for the rights of trans people, the rights of women, because it gives them clear categories to now make good laws, make good policies that actually consider the rights of everybody.
Well, exactly. And again, the Supreme Court were very, very clear to talk about in no way does this mean people can discriminate against trans people. It simply points out that the rights of women to single-sex spaces are only available to women and not to men who think they're women, and to, and likewise for single-sex spaces for men. Nadia Whittome, Charlotte Nichols, Kate Osborne, Olivia Blake, they signed a statement, basically a trans right pledge. They say that criticises the divisive Supreme Court trans ruling. They said that lesbian rights do not conflict with those of transgender people, even though we know 40% of, until this point, 40% of people who are on, lesbian online dating websites are actually men, often men with a beard, saying, well, I'm a trans woman with a penis, but I think you're a bigot if you don't have sex with me. I mean, clearly those are in conflict, are they not? They say, we affirm our unwavering commitment to the dignity, safety and liberation of lesbian and trans people in all their diversity, and stand united against all forms of transphobia, lesbophobia, didn't know that was even a thing, and misogyny. There's no pride in exclusion. But the whole point was this wasn't, again, this is an interesting thing, this wasn't a ruling about trans people, it was a ruling about women. Not everything is about you, trans people, I would say. It was about women's rights, and where women's rights are, where trans rights conflict with women's rights are upheld by the 2010 equality law. Why do they think this is so divisive and transphobic?
Well, I think they just failed to understand what it actually means. They haven't seemed to thought about it properly, because actually this ruling is better for trans people and it's better for women. The Supreme Court saying that any other understanding of what women means in the Equality Act would be incoherent. I mean, how they can then repeat this again and again is just bizarre. Just because you repeat something over and over doesn't make it true.
Well, it is the same people who say, J.K. Rowling's transphobic, and you say, can you give me an example when she says trans women are not women? It's like, well, that's not transphobic. That's A, biological fact, and B, the law. So it's not transphobic. It doesn't have any meaning, does it?
Absolutely. And if me saying that women as a sex class matters makes me transphobic, then I think so be it. It kind of undermines what transphobia means in the first place.
Well, exactly.
If everything's transphobic.
Exactly. Facts don't have feelings or care about feelings. Indeed, I'm fascinated to see that doctors, junior medics at the British Medical Association have kind of joined in this. They've called the Supreme Court trans ruling, in their words, scientifically illiterate. This is a motion which was passed at the conference on Saturday, criticised the ruling as biologically nonsensical. They say that the binary divide between sex and gender has no basis in science or medicine, while also being actively harmful to transgender and gender diverse people. Now, this is rather terrifying, because I don't think these people should be allowed to practice as doctors, and I definitely think that no one should want to see a doctor or allow your child to see a doctor who doesn't understand the difference between the biological sexes.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It just undermines their credibility entirely. And I think that that's why them coming out and saying that is pretty nonsensical. I mean, with the puberty blockers already, there's all the scandals involved with that that's undermining the medical profession. We need doctors. They are just letting themselves down and just undermining trust. I mean, I think this is the problem with gender ideology in general, it shows how it's undermining trust in our institutions. And the fact that the BMA are coming out and saying that, it just highlights how deep this has got. And actually, if we hadn't had the Supreme Court ruling, you know, all of the vulnerable women that are suffering because of these policies would continue to suffer. I mean, we keep talking about toilets, but actually it's about the most vulnerable women on hospital wards. It's the women that have biological women that need smears.
Don't say biological women. We're just women.
Just
There's
women.
only one kind. We're not a subset. I've always said to people, do not use. When women started saying females, no, we keep up. We don't let them steal our word. It's our word. We're the only kind. No, but you're right. It's like refuges, prisons. Right now, today, there are men claiming to be women who are allowed in women's prisons in this country. That is an outrage. And by the way, did you see Rory Stewart in his mad podcast with Alistair Campbell is? And Rory Stewart, you know, was former prisons minister, who, while he was prisons minister, said that there had been cases, he admitted, and it's been proven in court, there have been cases of supposed trans women, i.e. men who claim to be trans, many of whom, by the way, have been convicted of sex assaults on women before they go into prison, who then miraculously discover they think they're women, very conveniently, put a wig on. They go into a women's prison, and there have been cases where they have sexually assaulted women prisoners who are highly vulnerable to attack in those circumstances when they're put behind bars in a cell. He's admitted that. And then he was saying in his podcast about this that this wasn't the most important issue. Well, maybe for you, Rory, as a bloke, not such a worry.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's extraordinary as well how they'll sort of talk about trans people but won't actually define what they are. And I think coming back to the doctors, that's part of the issue, is doctors are used to working with symptoms and you know, really clear, these are the symptoms, so therefore this is the diagnosis and this is the treatment options. And actually, like, that's where when you say trans woman, well, what do you actually mean when you talk about that? Because actually we can objectively measure a category of women, and therefore we can understand the policy that we need to support them. And in the same way, but I actually think that's where the conversation should go. Okay, so what is a trans woman? Because if it's self-identifying, then that actually makes it really difficult, because if you have a patient come in unconscious, you don't go, oh, maybe they're trans, because if they're unconscious, they can't tell you. You go, they're male or female, i.e. they're a man or they're a woman.
And you treat them and you give them drugs. I mean, again, different amounts of drugs, different kinds of treatments based on that biological reality rather than a feeling. And again, I just find it terrifying. We had, you know, I think the American, I think British Psychological and Psychiatric Associations massively backing, you know, the idea that there are trans children and they need to be treated, supporting puberty blockers, gender affirming care, as they call it, which has basically been drugging and mutilating children's bodies for a political ideology. I mean, it is absolutely appalling. And I thank God we've got some sanity coming back in this country, but we clearly got to fight back against some lunatic MPs and some very, very, very scary medics as well.
Yeah, very privileged medics. I think it's very much a luxury belief.
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
it's a belief system. So,
absolutely. Emma Hartley, thank you so much for joining us. Campaign at Women's Rights Network.